Ladies, let me talk to the woman who finally got tired. The woman who gave everything, her time, her heart, her loyalty, and still ended up feeling like she was the only one showing up. The woman who kept talking, explaining, hoping he would understand until one day she didn't have anything left to say. This message is for you because there comes a moment, a powerful, quiet, life-changing moment when a woman wakes up and realizes she's done performing for someone who never appreciated the show. She's done trying to prove her worth to a man who didn't even know how to see it. She's done pouring into someone who only came around when he was thirsty. And instead of crying, begging, or arguing, she chooses something he never expected. Silence. See, silence is not weakness. Silence is not giving up. Silence is not defeat. Silence is what happens when a woman finally understands her value. It's what happens when she learns her peace is more important than his attention. It's what happens when she realizes she deserves love, consistency, effort, not confusion and excuses. This speech is about that silence. The silence that shook him. The silence that changed you. The silence that wasn't the end of the story, but the beginning of your power. So sit back, breathe deep, and listen closely, because once a woman chooses silence, everything, and I mean everything, starts to shift. Silence is the first sign you woke up. Silence is one of the loudest things a woman can ever give a man. It speaks in ways words never could. It reveals a shift that is deep, intentional, and powerful. When a woman finally goes silent, it's not because she ran out of things to say. It's because she ran out of reasons to keep justifying, repeating, and explaining what should have been understood the first time. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is awakening. See, before silence comes a storm. It comes after nights of replaying conversations, mornings of waiting for texts, days spent wondering what you could have done differently, and months of trying to hold together something he kept tearing apart. Silence is never the first reaction. It's the final realization. It's the point where your heart says enough and your spirit says we're done here. It's the moment you stop trying to convince a man of your worth and you start remembering it yourself. A woman wakes up the moment she understands that love is not supposed to feel like begging. Attention is not supposed to feel like a reward. Consistency is not supposed to be optional. And respect, that should never depend on your silence or your suffering. You wake up when you realize that any man who needs you to be confused in order to feel important is not a man you build a future with. He's a man you walk away from. When you wake up, you recognize the game. You see the pattern. You catch the manipulation. You stop mistaking breadcrumbs for effort. You stop confusing his mixed signals as maybe he just needs time. No, baby, he had time. He wasted it. And now you're done allowing him to waste yours. Silence is your announcement. My peace is too expensive for this. Silence is strength. People think talking is power, but the truth is talking keeps you tied to the situation. Every message you send, every explanation you give, every time you ask for clarity, you're still participating. Silence is the first step in stepping out of the cycle. It's the moment you stop feeding the dynamic that's draining you. Silence is not withdrawal, it's elevation. When a woman stays quiet, she's not quitting, she's choosing herself. She's saying, I deserve better than this confusion, better than this inconsistency, better than this half effort, half love, half presence. Silence is the first moment she refuses to negotiate with someone who already showed her his priorities. It's the moment she stops fighting for someone who didn't fight for her. And here's what men don't expect. Silence doesn't come with announcement. It's not dramatic. It's not loud. It's not posted on social media or written in a long paragraph. It shows up calmly, quietly, peacefully. It arrives in the way she stops reacting to his games, the way she stops responding to his late night texts, the way she no longer asks where things are going. The way she doesn't chase, doesn't question, doesn't explain. Silence is simply the absence of effort. And that absence, that's how a man knows she finally woke up. Because silence is not just the end of the noise, it's the beginning of clarity. When you remove your voice, you remove his power. When you remove your presence, you remove his ego's fuel. When you remove your response, you remove the illusion that he still matters more than your peace. Silence is your declaration. I am no longer available for anything that diminishes me. Silence is also self-respect. It's understanding that you don't need to convince someone to see your value. Real men recognize value. They don't play with it. They don't delay. They don't confuse. They don't breadcrumb. They show up. They stay consistent. They communicate clearly. They contribute peace, not problems. Your silence is the moment you stop hoping for those qualities in a man who's already shown you he doesn't have them. And when you wake up, you shift the entire dynamic. A man who once felt confident that you would always be there suddenly faces a version of you he doesn't know how to handle. The version who doesn't need him, doesn't chase him, doesn't wait for him. The version who realized that silence protects what his inconsistency tried to destroy. Silence is the first sign you woke up because it means you finally saw the truth, not the potential, not the fantasy, not the version of him you created in your mind. You saw the reality. And once you see reality clearly, you cannot go back to foolishness. Silence is not a reaction. It's a revelation. It's not weakness. It's wisdom. It's not punishment. It's power. It's the moment you choose peace over pain, clarity over confusion, and self-respect over staying where you are not valued. Silence is the first sign you woke up and the first step toward the life, love, and future you truly deserve. Silence makes him hear his own behavior. Silence is not just the absence of words. It's the presence of truth. When a woman goes silent, she doesn't just stop speaking. She shifts the entire emotional atmosphere around a man. And the most unexpected thing happens. He is forced to sit alone with the sound of his own behavior. Silence holds up a mirror. And in that mirror, a man sees everything he tried to ignore, justify, or brush off. Because as long as you were talking, explaining, expressing, reminding, and pleading, he didn't have to confront himself. You became the distraction. You became the noise he could blame. He could point to your tone, your frustration, your questions, your overreacting. He could call you emotional. He could call you dramatic. He could convince himself that you were the problem, not his inconsistency, not his mixed signals, not his half effort, not his selfish choices. But silence removes that excuse. When you stop talking, there is no argument he can hide behind. When you stop asking for clarity, he has no confusion to blame. When you stop reaching out, he can't pretend he was about to call. When you stop explaining your feelings, he can't pretend he didn't know what you needed. When the conversation ends, he is left alone with the truth he avoided. It was never your voice that created the problem. It was his behavior. Silence forces a man to hear the things he refused to listen to. He hears the disrespect. He hears the neglect. He hears the selfishness. He hears the lack of effort. He hears the absence of consistency. He hears the things you tried to communicate, but he wasn't willing to acknowledge because silence changes roles. Before, you were the one carrying the weight of the relationship. You were doing all the emotional labor, pushing for communication, trying to fix things, trying to make sense of things, trying to understand him deeper than he understood himself. But silence hands that weight right back to him. Now he has to think. He has to sit with the consequences. He has to examine what he did. And that is uncomfortable because men are used to women doing the emotional processing for them. When you go silent, he starts noticing things he never paid attention to before. He notices you're not texting anymore. He notices you're not reacting to his stories. He notices you're not checking up on him. He notices you're not asking how his day was. He notices the void. And for the first time, he sees how much you feel, because silence removes your emotional presence, and your emotional presence was covering up his shortcomings. When you go quiet, the imbalance becomes obvious. He can't run from it anymore. He can't hide behind charm or excuses. He has to face the truth. He contributed nothing compared to what you carried. That silence makes him reflect, not always immediately, but inevitably. And reflection is exactly what he avoided while you were still communicating. Silence forces him to retrace his steps. What did I do? When did she pull away? Why did she stop trying? What changed? Why does her absence feel heavier than her presence ever did? And those questions, they echo louder than any words you could have spoken. Silence exposes him, not to you, but to himself. It reveals the laziness he thought you didn't notice. It reveals the mixed signals he thought he could keep sending. It reveals the games he thought you'd always play. It reveals the disrespect he thought you'd tolerate. It reveals the inconsistency he thought you'd excuse. Because when you go quiet, he has no choice but to face the reality that he was the one who created the disconnect, not you. He starts realizing that your silence isn't attitude, it's consequence. It isn't manipulation, it's clarity. It isn't revenge, it's response. Silence makes him revisit every moment you tried to communicate your needs. The times you asked for effort, the times you asked for quality time, the times you asked for reassurance, the times you asked for honesty. He remembers every moment he dismissed, minimized, or ignored, and now he has to carry the weight of what he refused to fix. And here's the most powerful part. Silence removes your accountability for his feelings. When you stop explaining yourself, you stop carrying guilt. When you stop defending yourself, you stop carrying blame. When you stop engaging, you stop participating in a dynamic he created. Silence makes him realize that the distance between you two didn't appear out of nowhere. He built it. Silence is the echo of everything he failed to hear when you were speaking. It's the reflection of his behavior without your excuses softening it. It's the moment he finally understands it wasn't her silence that hurt me. It was her voice I didn't value, and now I don't have it. Silence makes a man hear his own behavior, and that sound hits deeper than any words ever could. Silence forces him to see what he took for granted. A man never realizes how much a woman carried until she stops carrying it. He never understands the depth of her presence until that presence disappears. And he never recognizes her value until silence makes him look around and see what's missing. Silence doesn't just remove your voice. It removes the comfort he built his ego on. It removes the emotional cushion he leaned on. It removes the attention he depended on. Silence forces him to see everything he took for granted, piece by piece, habit by habit, moment by moment. Because when you were there, consistently, lovingly, generously, he mistook your effort for routine. He mistook your understanding for obligation. He mistook your patience for weakness. He mistook your forgiveness for acceptance. He mistook your availability for permanence. A man who gets comfortable forgets that showing up isn't owed, it's gifted. But the moment you go silent, that gift stops being automatic. And suddenly, he remembers what he used to overlook. Silence makes him notice the small things first. The good morning text that used to start his day, gone. The check-in call during his lunch break, quiet. The late night drive safe message when he said he was out, no longer there. The reminders, the support, the affection, the concern, all of it slips away. And that shift hits him harder than he ever expected because he never realized how deeply he counted on it. You weren't just a woman he talked to, you were a presence he depended on. But he didn't see it because you made it look easy. You made love look effortless. You made emotional labor look natural. You made caring look automatic. Silence exposes the truth. You didn't have to give any of it. You chose to. A man doesn't realize how much he leaned on your emotional support until silence removes it. Suddenly, he has no one to vent to, no one to tell him it's going to be okay, no one to remind him he's capable, no one to encourage him after a long day, no one to hype him up when he doubts himself. That hole you leave, it isn't empty, it's revealing. It shows him you weren't just someone to talk to, you were his balance, his grounding, his comfort. He took it for granted because he didn't understand how rare it was. Silence also shows him the things he dismissed. All those times you tried to communicate your feelings, all those times you asked for more effort, all those moments you wanted clarity, all those opportunities he had to step up. He sees them differently now because silence opens his eyes. When he scrolls up through old messages, he doesn't see nagging. He sees someone who cared, someone who wanted to make it work, someone who tried harder than she should have had to. Silence makes him realize that what he called overthinking was actually intuition. What he called sensitivity was emotional intelligence. What he called drama was a woman trying to meet him halfway. And the biggest realization, silence forces him to see that you weren't asking for too much. He was giving too little. Silence also reveals the difference between your presence and his habits. He starts noticing how empty his days feel. He sees his phone is dry. He feels the lack of excitement when he wakes up. Even his routine feels off. Why? Because you added meaning to the spaces he took for granted. You built emotional richness where he contributed nothing but inconsistency. And now that silence has taken what you built, he's confronted with the truth. You were the one adding value the entire time. He also starts to feel the absence of your effort physically. No more checking on him. No more thoughtful gestures. No more emotional investment. No more comforting words. No more patience. No more presence. What he thought would always be available is suddenly nowhere to be found. Silence exposes the illusion he created, that you needed him more than he needed you. But when silence cuts off your energy, he realizes the opposite was true. He wasn't the prize. He was the one benefiting from your love. He was the one receiving more than he gave. He was the one being poured into while giving drops in return. And here's the sting. Silence removes you so completely that he finally sees you clearly. He sees what you brought, what you carried, what you offered, and what he so casually overlooked. He sees how much you tried. He sees how much you loved. He sees how much you supported him. Silence doesn't just show him what he had. It shows him what he lost. Because silence forces him to confront the truth he avoided. He didn't lose you when you walked away. He started losing you the moment he took you for granted. And silence is the moment that loss becomes visible. Silence protects your energy and rebuilds your power. Silence isn't just a response. It's a strategy. It's a shield. It's a sanctuary. It's the moment you step back from the noise, the confusion, the mixed signals, and the emotional tug of war, and you say, my energy is too precious to waste here. Silence protects you in ways talking never could. It saves your spirit from constantly explaining what should have been understood, defending what shouldn't have been attacked, and fighting for someone who wasn't fighting for you. Because every time you argue, every time you justify, every time you chase clarity from someone committed to giving you confusion, you drain your energy, you weaken your boundaries, you lose a little bit of yourself trying to hold on to someone who isn't even holding on to you. Silence stops that leak. It seals the cracks where he kept pulling from you emotionally. It closes the door he kept walking in and out of. Silence is not shutting down. It's shutting out what no longer serves your peace. When you go silent, you stop giving him access to your emotions. And that is where your power begins to return. Because the moment he can no longer trigger you, control your moods, or drag you into conversations that lead nowhere, you reclaim the emotional space he once occupied. Silence gives you back your mind, your clarity, your balance. It lets you hear yourself again after being drowned out by the noise of disappointment and unmet expectations. Silence is self-preservation. It's recognizing that your energy is not a charity and your heart is not a dumping ground. It's realizing that every message you don't send, every argument you don't start, every explanation you don't give is an act of emotional maturity. It's a decision to rise above the cycle instead of staying trapped in it. Because when you stop engaging, you stop participating in your own draining. And here's the thing. Power doesn't rebuild in chaos. It rebuilds in quiet. Silence gives you space to breathe, to think, to detach, to see things without the fog of emotions clouding your judgment. When you're not constantly reacting to him, you can finally respond to yourself. Silence lets you reflect on what you truly want, not what you've been trying to force. It lets you evaluate his actions without romanticizing his potential. It lets you step into your worth without apologizing for it. When you stop giving energy to what drains you, that energy returns to you multiplied. Suddenly, you have more time for self-care, more mental space to focus on your goals, more emotional freedom to reconnect with who you were before you dimmed yourself for someone else. Silence becomes the foundation of your comeback, your glow up, your healing. Silence is strength because it teaches you discipline, the discipline to not respond to every impulse, not feed every emotional fire, not chase after every disappearing act. It's learning that peace can't be found in another person. It's something you cultivate within yourself. And silence is how you start cultivating it again. When you go silent, you also break the emotional dependency that kept you stuck. You stop waiting for his messages. You stop revolving your mood around his effort. You stop searching for signs of affection where there are none. Silence resets your emotional system. It gives your heart a chance to detox from the roller coaster he put you on. And once you taste calm again, chaos becomes unattractive. Silence rebuilds your power in another way too. It shifts the dynamic. When he no longer has access to your emotions, he loses the control he once had. He can't push your buttons if you're not in the room. He can't manipulate your reactions if you're not reacting. He can't keep the cycle alive if you don't participate. Silence breaks patterns. It interrupts toxic habits. It sends a message louder than words. You no longer have that kind of influence over me. And here's what happens next. With every day you stay silent, you grow stronger. Your boundaries grow firmer. Your confidence grows clearer. Your intuition gets sharper. You start to see yourself as the prize again, not because he tells you, but because you finally tell yourself. Silence protects your energy because it removes you from places where you were losing yourself trying to keep someone else. It rebuilds your power because it returns you to you. It reminds you that you never needed to beg for love. You never needed to chase attention. You never needed to fight for respect. The right man will match your energy, not drain it. Silence is not withdrawal. It is transformation. It is not weakness. It is wisdom. It is not avoidance. It is elevation. Silence is you choosing you. And in that choice, your power comes back stronger than ever. Silence makes him realize you never needed him. You chose him. There is a moment in every woman's silence where a man finally understands the truth he never wanted to face. You never needed him. You chose him. And the difference between those two realities is massive. Because when a woman acts from need, she clings, she tolerates, she shrinks herself, she accepts bare minimums. But when a woman acts from choice, she can walk away at any time. She can reclaim her peace. She can rebuild her life. She can silence the noise and rise above anything meant to break her. Silence is what reveals the truth of that power. As long as you were talking, as long as you were explaining, asking, trying, giving, fixing, he believed he was essential in your life. He thought your effort meant dependency. He mistook your consistency for need. He assumed your presence was tied to him, not to your own heart. He believed he was irreplaceable simply because you chose not to replace him. But when you go silent, all of that illusion collapses. Silence shows him you were never stuck. Silence shows him you were never trapped. Silence shows him you were never desperate. Silence shows him you were never waiting on him to complete you. All the things he thought kept you tied to him were really choices you made day after day out of love, loyalty, hope, or belief in potential. He didn't realize your presence was voluntary. He thought it was automatic. He thought it was guaranteed. He thought it was rooted in dependence. Silence proves that none of that was true, because when you stop talking, stop chasing, stop reacting, stop trying to maintain the connection, he suddenly sees how quickly your energy can shift when you finally choose yourself. Silence shows him you are capable of rebuilding your emotional world without him in it. And that realization shakes a man in ways your words never could. Silence shows him that the reason you stayed was because you cared, not because you couldn't leave. It shows him that your love was an offering, not a crutch. It shows him that your patience was strength, not weakness. It shows him that your presence was a privilege, not a life requirement. Men often misinterpret a woman's softness as dependency. They see nurturing and assume neediness. They see effort and assume attachment. They think they are the center of your emotional gravity. But silence disrupts that belief. Silence reminds him that you have your own life, your own purpose, your own identity, your own strength, and that none of it was built on him. The moment you go silent, he starts asking questions. Was she really into me, or was she choosing to give me her time? Did she need me, or was she simply loyal? Did she stay because she couldn't leave, or because her heart was bigger than my effort? Did I mistake her love for weakness? Silence forces him to reevaluate the entire relationship from a new angle, one where you hold the power, and that power becomes undeniable. Because if you truly needed him, your silence wouldn't be this strong. If you needed him, you'd be chasing clarity. If you needed him, you'd be arguing. If you need him, you'd be begging for answers. But you're quiet, calm, composed, detached, and he can feel the shift. Silence reveals that your world didn't collapse without him. Your routine stayed intact. Your goals didn't disappear. Your self-worth didn't crumble. Your smile didn't vanish. Even your peace got louder. And that's what unsettles him. Because deep down, he expected you to fall apart. He expected you to panic. He expected you to wait for him to come back. He expected your emotional dependence to keep the door open. Silence proves that the only reason you didn't walk away sooner is because you were giving him a chance he didn't earn. Silence makes him see the truth he avoided. He was never your foundation. He was an addition. He was never your source. He was a bonus. He was never your oxygen. He was a chapter. When silence enters the room, he realizes that you don't crumble without him. You evolve. You don't break. You bloom. You don't chase. You choose. And that truth is powerful because it shows him that your value was never tied to him. He was a moment in your story, not the meaning of your life. So when he hears nothing from you, he finally hears the truth. You didn't stay because you needed him. You stayed because you wanted him. And now that you no longer want him, he has nothing to hold on to. Silence shows him that your love was a privilege and your absence is the lesson. Silence asks not the end. I tease your beginning. Silence has a funny way of looking like an ending when you're standing in the middle of it. When you first pull back, when you stop explaining yourself, when you stop begging a man to understand what he never tried to hear in the first place, it feels like something is breaking. It feels like you're losing, like you're walking away from something you invested your heart into. But let me tell you something Steve Harvey style, loud and clear. Silence is never the ending for a woman who finally chooses herself. Silence is the beginning of a whole new chapter, one where you hold the pen, you write the plot, and you decide who gets access going forward. You see, a lot of women stay in situations long past their expiration date simply because they're scared of the quiet. They're scared of being alone with their own thoughts. They're scared of the pain that rises up when they stop distracting themselves with a man who doesn't show up for them. But silence is where God talks. Silence is where truth walks in. Silence is where your strength grows roots. The noise of a man who doesn't value you has been drowning out your own voice for too long. And once the noise stops, you finally hear the sound of your real self returning. When you choose silence, you choose clarity. You choose healing. You choose elevation. You choose a life where your peace comes first. And the most powerful part, when a woman steps into silence, the world around her starts shifting. A man who thought he had you figured out suddenly doesn't. A man who thought you'd always be available suddenly isn't sure. A man who thought he could play with your time suddenly feels the distance. But here's the twist. Your silence isn't about him. It's about you finally stepping into everything you buried while trying to love somebody who didn't know how to love you back. This silence you're in, it's the reset button you never realized you needed. It's the detox your heart was begging for. It's where you learn to breathe again without waiting for someone else to decide you're worth their effort. It's where you remember the version of yourself that existed before the pain, before the waiting, before the disappointment. That woman, the strong one, the brave one, the glowing one, she's still in there. Silence is how you bring her back. And let me make something real clear. Silence is not weakness. Silence is not surrender. Silence is power. Power over your emotions, power over your mind, power over the old version of you that tolerated too much. And when a woman stands in her power, she becomes unstoppable. She becomes undeniable. She becomes the woman every man realizes too late was a blessing he mishandled. Silence isn't where your story ends. It's where you rise, where you rebuild, where you step out of the storm and finally see the sun. It's the beginning of your comeback, your breakthrough, your transformation. It's not the end of the relationship you hoped would work. It's the beginning of the life you were meant to live. So if you're in silence right now, don't panic, don't chase, don't doubt yourself. You're not losing. You're leveling up. You're not breaking. You're growing. You're not being forgotten. You're being prepared. God removed the noise so you could hear your own power again. This is your beginning, your rebirth, your awakening. And trust me, when a woman rises from silence, she comes back stronger, wiser, happier, and more in love with herself than ever before. Silence isn't the end. It's the moment your real life begins. Ladies, hear me when I say this. A woman who chooses silence is a woman who has finally chosen herself. Throughout this entire journey, you didn't lose anything. You simply found what you should have never forgotten: your worth, your power, your peace, your voice. Silence wasn't your punishment. It was your protection. It wasn't rejection. It was redirection. It wasn't the end of your story. It was the moment you picked up the pen and started writing a better one. He may have wanted you obsessed, chasing, proving, explaining, breaking your own heart, trying to earn a place in his life. But instead, you gave him silence. And in that silence, you discovered strength he never expected, confidence he couldn't control, and a version of you he never believed you'd grow into. And let me tell you something. The woman who walks out quietly is the woman a man remembers the loudest. Not because she begged, but because she stopped. Not because she fought, but because she healed. Not because she needed him, but because she finally realized she didn't. So as you step forward, step boldly, step peacefully, step with the kind of grace that says, I'm done accepting less than I deserve. Your silence is your new standard. Your growth is your comeback. Your peace is your power and your future. It's bigger, brighter, and more beautiful than anything you left behind. Walk into it like the queen you are, with your head high, your heart steady, and your silence speaking louder than any words ever could.